Fidelity is something easier said than done. This has been one of my great experiences over the whole course of my life, right? It's very easy to talk about being faithful, but it's a lot harder to actually be faithful. And something that comes to mind and something that jumps out at us from the words or from the pages of the gospel is how Christ really wants fidelity, but he wants fidelity especially in our interior. Those external habits that we form over time, of course, they're important, but even more important is that work of transformation that has to happen on the inside.
When we speak of fidelity, one of the images that comes to mind from the Gospels is that of the whitewashed tombs, when Christ compares the Pharisees to this. And it's the image is very evocative, right? This expression really evokes the image that Christ is describing, that of a whitewashed tomb, which is all dead bones and decomposing flesh on the inside, but on the outside looks pristine. And oftentimes with fidelity, that can be the big question, right? Is it about how we look on the outside, or is it about how we are on the inside? And that can be a tension that we focus on. Because on the outside, well, it's very easy to measure how we're doing. And so if we want to do better, it's easy to see the outside as the first place to work. But the inside, ultimately, is what matters more. Or at least the outside should be a reflection of what really is going on inside.
Yeah, and that's something that I actually find fascinating, and how much Christ comes back to this, right? Because obviously fidelity is something that's very important, and something that's very important to Christ. And I'm sure that a lot of those external details, well, Christ also recognizes their value. He wasn't criticizing the Pharisees because they were trying to fulfill the law. He was criticizing the Pharisees because they would just focus on the external details, and they allowed themselves to still be full of greed and self-interest. And that's what Jesus wants to change. And he has that as well, the example of, he says that they wash the outside of the cup and the dish, but they leave the inside, dirty. And I was just thinking, if you sit down for a nice meal someplace and all of a sudden you pick up your water glass or your wine glass, and inside you see a whole culture of mold growing there, you'd be disgusting. You just kind of spit it out. You're like, what's going on here? I don't want to eat at this place. Let's go to another restaurant. And I think that Christ is speaking about that deeper work. And like you said, those external habits, that should be coming from who we are on the inside. And that's that fidelity, that daily living out of our duty that is a worthy sacrifice that we can offer to our Lord.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think even from there, it clears up another misconception that sometimes people can have about the faith. They can look and say, oh, it's just a big list of rules. It's just, I have to do this, I have to do that. And nobody wants to be told what they have to do, really. Right? But whenever you start with the inside, whenever you're loving God from the inside, and that's what's first, then the outside flows naturally. Because it's flowing from your heart, flowing from your convictions. But if you just try and clean the outside always, ultimately you'll not see the point of it, and you'll grow tired of it, and you won't do the outside as well, even as if you had started with the inside.
Right, and that's something that's really important, that fidelity is all about love. And hopefully when we come to the end of our life, we're going to be able to hear from our Lord, well done, good and faithful servant. And that fidelity is not about checking off a bunch of boxes on a list. It's about building a relationship with Christ.
Yes.
Today we've heard strong words from the mouth of Christ. He calls those who are hypocritical, he calls them whitewashed tombs. He says that they wash the outside of the chalice, but they forget that which is inside. Well, we know that we want to hear at the end of our life those words from our Lord, well done, good and faithful servant. How do we do that? By living fidelity day by day. And that's where Pope Francis has Saint Joseph as a great example of this, in how he invites us to follow that example of Saint Joseph. Hope you liked today's video. I'd like you to put like, share this with others. God bless and have a great week.